The galaxy was burning. Stars that once gave light now saw the shadows of warships passing in silence. For months, the Valons had moved from system to system, crushing every fleet that stood in their way. They were hunters, cold and patient, and every alien who faced them knew they could not be stopped. Planets screamed for help, colonies burned, and the Federation was falling apart. On the command ship of the Saurians, Admiral Kellen stood with his hands trembling. His people were known for wisdom and peace, not for war. Their fleets were built for travel and science, not destruction. Now he watched the last line of ships shatter against the Valon invasion. Every blast of plasma tore holes in the sky. Every scream of his crew echoed across the bridge. "Send the call," he whispered, his voice breaking. A young officer turned to him with wide eyes. "Admiral, to whom shall we send it?" Kellen closed his eyes, his scales pale with fear. "To anyone who can hear us," he said. "Anyone who still believes in hope." The distress signal was released. A desperate cry across the stars. It carried the voices of broken worlds, of families lost, of civilizations on their knees. It was not a call of pride, but of surrender. If no one answered, the Federation would die. For days there was silence. The call reached empty space, dying suns, forgotten stations. No ally strong enough dared to move. No empire foolish enough to challenge the Valons. Hope turned to ash, and the Federation prepared for the end. Then a reply came. The signal was short, the voice harsh, heavy with static. "This is Earth Fleet Command." Message received. Those on the Saurian command ship froze. They looked at one another with confusion. "Earth?" one officer whispered. "That name? I thought it was only a myth." Admiral Kellen frowned, searching his memory. Long ago he had heard stories of a strange world at the edge of the galaxy. A planet not part of any council, not bound by any law. It was called a Deathworld. A place where storms, beasts, and the planet itself tried to kill those who lived there. No peaceful species survived such a place, and yet humans did, the officers muttered with unease. What kind of beings live on a death world? Can we trust them? Are they even real? Kellen silenced them with a wave of his hand. Real or not, they answered when no one else did. Across the dark void, ships moved, massive, ugly shapes unlike the elegant curves of Saurian vessels. Human warships were not made for beauty. They were built like weapons first, homes second. Their armor was thick. Their guns were many. Every part of them looked dangerous. When the Federation fleet first saw them arrive, whispers filled the air. "Those are not ships," one Saurian gasped. "Those are monsters," another whispered. "How can such beings exist?" The humans spoke little. Their commander, a tall figure with hard eyes, looked at the alien leaders without fear. "You called for help," he said, his voice like steel. "We came. No promise of mercy, no words of comfort, only the certainty of war." Admiral Kellen felt his chest tighten. Part of him feared these humans more than the Valons. But when he looked into their eyes, he saw something else. A fire, a hunger, a refusal to bow. The kind of spirit that could face monsters and not break. The kind of spirit that came only from living on a death world. Far away, the Valons received word of new ships in the war. Their leaders laughed, another weak species joining the slaughter. But one scout who had seen the human fleet did not laugh. His last transmission carried a single line before static swallowed his voice. "They are not like the others," he said. "They are predators." In the silence of space, the human ships took position, cannons armed, engines roaring like beasts. The Federation watched in awe and terror. For the first time in months, hope returned. But it was not a gentle hope. It was sharp, dangerous, and wild. Admiral Kellen stood tall, his heart pounding. The distress call had been answered. But as he looked upon the humans, he wondered if they had saved the galaxy, or unleashed something far worse. The stars trembled as the Deathworlders arrived. The first meeting was not held on a world, but in the cold silence of deep space. The Federation ships floated like shattered glass around the human fleet, their hulls scorched and broken from battles they could never win. When the humans arrived, the stars themselves seemed smaller, their warships blotting out the light. They were massive, blocky, brutal shapes of steel. No grace, no beauty, only purpose, the aliens whispered in fear, for these were not explorers or diplomats. These were predators made of metal. Inside the flagship Iron Resolve, the human commander, Admiral Hayes, studied the faces of the alien leaders on his holo display. Tall Saurians with scaled skin, fragile Lyrians with glass-like bones, and the pale-eyed Voth who shook under the weight of fear. They expected kind words or some promise of safety. But Hayes gave them none. He leaned forward, his voice deep and calm. "You asked for help," he said. "Help has arrived, but understand this. We do not fight like you, we do not beg, and we do not run. When war comes, we end it." The aliens shifted nervously. The Lyrian delegate whispered to her neighbor, "End it? No one ends war. We only survive until it returns." But the humans were different. Their eyes told the truth of their world. On Earth, even the air could kill. Storms tore cities apart and beasts stalked the night. Every human alive was forged by struggle. They were not just soldiers. They were survivors of the cruelest homeworld in known space. The first demonstration came quickly. A small Veilon raiding party slipped into the system, hoping to crush what remained of the Federation fleet. The aliens panicked, scattering in confusion. But the humans did not move with fear. They moved with hunger. Admiral Hayes gave a single order, and the iron resolve surged forward. Its guns roared, spitting fire that ripped through Veilon armor like paper. Smaller human frigates darted between enemy ships, ramming, tearing, unleashing storms of missiles. The battle was short, brutal, and final. The Saurian Admiral Kellen watched in shock. He had seen battles before, but never like this. Humans did not fight cleanly. They fought with madness, with fire in their veins. One frigate was torn in half, yet its crew refused to eject. Instead, the broken ship slammed into a Veilon cruiser, tearing both apart in a blaze of fire. The aliens gasped, horrified. "They sacrifice themselves," one whispered. "They choose death to kill the enemy," Kellen trembled. For he knew then that the humans were not saviors. They were weapons given flesh. When the smoke cleared, the Veilons were gone, scattered wrecks drifting into the void. The humans moved among the debris in silence, gathering their dead, repairing their ships. Not a single cheer rose from their fleet. War was not glory to them. It was a duty, a burden they carried without joy. That silence was more frightening than any scream. Later, a meeting was called aboard a neutral station. The alien leaders demanded answers. "What are you?" The Lyrian delegate asked, her voice trembling. Admiral Hayes met her eyes. "We are human," he said simply. "We come from Earth, a death world, a place that tried to kill us every day. We learned to fight not because we wanted to, but because we had no choice," the Voth counselor leaned forward, whispering. "But why? Why answer our call? What do you want from us?" The room fell silent, all eyes on the human commander. For a moment Hayes said nothing, then he gave a thin, cold smile. "We want the same thing you want," he said. "To stop the Veilons. To survive." But Kellen saw something in his eyes, something he could not name. It was not cruelty, not greed, but a hunger too deep to understand. Rumors spread across the Federation like fire. Stories of the humans, the Deathworlders, the demons of steel. Some called them saviors. Others whispered they were worse than the Veilons. Children asked their parents if the humans would protect them or consume them. And in every shadowed corner of the galaxy, the Veilons listened. They studied the wreckage of their fallen ships, the brutal scars left by human weapons. And for the first time in centuries, the Veilons felt fear on the bridge of the Iron Resolve. Hayes looked out at the stars. His officers worked quietly, their faces calm, their hands steady. To them, war was not chaos, it was a craft, a skill sharpened by endless struggle. "Admiral," one of his captains said, "scouts report more Veilon fleets moving this way. Large ones." Hayes nodded slowly, a dark fire in his eyes. "Good," he said. "Let them come. We will show them what Deathworlders truly are." Admiral Kellen watched the humans prepare. He felt a strange mix of terror and hope. He knew the Veilons would bleed, that much was certain. But he also knew the galaxy itself would never be the same. The Deathworlders had come, and they would not leave quietly. The stars seemed to tremble as if the universe itself held its breath. The first battle had ended, but this was only the beginning. And in the silence of space, every alien heart asked the same question. Had the Federation been saved? Or had it just awakened its most dangerous allies? The void between stars was calm, but every commander knew that silence in war was only a lie. The Veilons were coming, and this time they came in force. Dozens of warships slipped from hyperspace, black and sharp, their hulls glowing with the red light of their engines. They had crushed every foe before, and they expected to crush again. The Federation fleet trembled at the sight, their crews whispering prayers. their captains readying for death. But the humans did not tremble. On the bridge of the Iron Resolve, Admiral Hayes stood like stone, his eyes fixed on the enemy formation. He raised his hand slowly, then lowered it. "All ships," he said, his voice calm as the void itself. "Advance," the Federation gasped. "No," one Saurian captain muttered. "It is suicide. We must retreat. We must scatter." But the humans did not scatter. Their ships surged forward, engines burning bright like wolves leaping at prey. The aliens could only watch as the humans charged headfirst into the storm. The first volley lit the stars. Valon cannons spat beams of fire, tearing through the void with blinding light. One human frigate took the hit, its hull splitting, flames bursting from its core, but even as it died, the frigate pushed forward, launching missiles at point-blank range before exploding. The Valon cruiser it struck spun out of control, breaking apart in a spray of molten metal. The alien allies gasped in horror. Humans did not fight like them. They did not cling to survival at all costs. They turned their deaths into weapons. Every loss was not weakness, but another strike at the enemy. On the command deck of the Valon flagship, their warlord snarled, "What are these creatures? Why do they not break?" No answer came, only the reports of more Valon ships falling. The humans moved with savage precision. One destroyer tore into the flank of the enemy, ramming its way through armor, firing until both ships exploded. Another squadron released drones that swarmed like insects, ripping into engines, detonating from within. The aliens of the Federation stood frozen in disbelief. Admiral Kellen watched the holo display. His scales trembling, he whispered to himself, "They fight like demons. No, not demons. Predators." He remembered the old stories of Earth, the cursed world, the Deathworld. Now he understood the truth. Humans were not shaped by peace, but by endless war against their own world. To them, battle was not horror, it was nature. As the fighting raged, Hayes walked calmly across his bridge. "Target their carriers," he ordered. A volley of human torpedoes streaked across the stars. The first carrier erupted, its decks torn apart, fighters scattering like sparks before fading to silence. The second carrier tried to run. But the humans were faster. Railguns pierced its hull, ripping it open until its heart went dark. The Federation ships began to follow, slowly at first. The aliens gathered courage from the humans' fury. Their weapons joined the storm, beams and plasma striking alongside human cannons. For the first time, the Valons began to falter. They had never known defeat, never known fear. Now they were being hunted. But victory came at a price. Human ships burned, wrecks drifting in silence. Entire crews gave their lives without hesitation. The Federation leaders could not understand. Why do they not fear death? One Lyrian asked in horror. Kellen answered softly, "Because they were born with death all around them, it has no power over them." At last, the Valon fleet broke. Their warlord shouted in rage, ordering retreat, but retreat was chaos, and chaos fed the humans. They chased relentless, cutting down stragglers, hammering the enemy until the void was filled with wreckage. Only a handful of Valon ships escaped, limping back into hyperspace carrying tales of terror. Silence returned to the battlefield. The stars glowed red with the burning of shattered ships. On the Iron Resolve, Admiral Hayes stood unshaken, his hands behind his back. "Count the dead," he ordered quietly. Reports came in, hundreds of human lives lost, ships destroyed, fleets crippled. But there was no mourning, only cold acceptance. For humans had learned long ago that survival demanded sacrifice. The alien allies gathered in secret after the battle. Whispers filled the chamber. "They fight with madness," one said. "No," another replied. "They fight with purpose. And that is worse." Some began to fear the humans more than the Valons. "What if, when the war is over, they turn on us?" The Lyrian delegate asked. Kellen said nothing, but in his heart the question echoed louder than any battle cry. On the other side of the galaxy, the Valon warlord raged. He struck his officers, cursing their weakness. But beneath his fury was something darker, doubt. For the first time, he had seen an enemy who did not bow, who did not break. He looked into the stars and whispered, "These humans, they are not prey, they are the storm." And across the galaxy, the legend began to spread. The Federation had survived where it should have fallen, and the reason was whispered in every corner of space. Not the Federation's courage, not their weapons, but a single truth. The Deathworlders had arrived, and war would never be the same again. The Valons had tasted something they had never known before: fear. Their fleets had been broken, their carriers burned, and their warlords' pride cut deep by the savagery of the humans. Yet in their retreat they did not rest. They sent shadows instead of soldiers, spies instead of fleets. If the humans could not be crushed in battle, then perhaps they could be understood. Perhaps their weakness could be found. The spies slipped through the dark lanes of space, carrying false names and stolen codes. They moved among the Federation worlds, asking questions with careful words. Always the same question, whispered in different tongues. What is Earth? Who are these Deathworlders? The answers they found were more terrifying than any plasma cannon. They heard of oceans that raged with storms strong enough to swallow fleets, of mountains that shook with fire, spilling rivers of molten stone, of beasts with teeth like swords and instincts to hunt even the cleverest prey, and of humans, small, fragile by sight, who survived it all. Every child of Earth grew up knowing pain, hunger, and danger. Every family had stories of death, and still they lived. The Valon spies reported back, their voices trembling. These are not like the others, one said. They do not bend, because their world has bent them already. The warlord listened in silence, his claws tightening. He saw in his mind not soldiers, but predators wearing the skin of men. Predators who had turned survival into their nature, war into their language. Meanwhile, in the Federation Council chambers, a different kind of fear was growing. The aliens had seen the humans fight. They had seen their madness and their silence in victory, and now they whispered to each other, what if they do not leave when the Valons are gone? The Lyrians, so delicate that even a fall could break their bones, shivered at the thought. The Voth, who prized knowledge over strength, spoke with unease. They saved us, yes. But what if salvation is only the first chain they place upon us? Admiral Kellen sat among them, his eyes heavy. He remembered the battle, the human frigate splitting apart yet still dragging an enemy to its death. He remembered the silence of their victory. No celebration, no mercy, only duty. The humans frightened him, yes, but they also gave him something he had not felt in years. Hope. And hope, he knew, was a dangerous thing. On the human flagship Iron Resolve, Admiral Hayes listened to his own reports. Valon fleets are gathering, his officer said. Larger than before. Hayes nodded, his expression unchanged. Good, he said simply. Let them think numbers matter. To him, war was not just fire and metal, it was patience, it was strategy, it was psychology. The enemy had to be broken in spirit before they could be broken in body. But even Hayes knew the Federation was restless.
He could see it in their eyes when he met them at council gatherings.
The aliens looked at him with both gratitude and fear. They whispered in their own languages, thinking humans could not hear, but humans always heard. And Hayes smiled without warmth. Let them whisper, he told his captains. Fear is a weapon too. The Valon spies sent more reports, darker this time. They had seen humans train their children to fight before they could read. They had seen cities built in places no sane species would ever live. Frozen tundras, burning deserts, toxic swamps, all made into homes. And they had heard stories of human history. Wars fought not for survival, but for pride, for power, for reasons no other race could understand. Billions dead, yet humanity always rising again. Stronger than before? The warlord slammed his clawed hand against his throne, sparks flying from the strike. These creatures are madness, he growled. Madness given flesh. But even as he raged, doubt gnawed at his mind. If they were madness, then how had they survived so long? If they were chaos, why did their fleets move with such perfect, ruthless precision? No, he realized, they were not madness. They were order born from chaos, and that was more terrifying than madness could ever be. Back in the Federation Council, the debate grew hotter. Some demanded the humans be controlled, chained with treaties and laws. Others whispered of betrayal, of striking the humans before they became too strong. But no one dared to say it too loud, because deep in their hearts, they knew the truth. If the humans discovered such betrayal, the Federation would burn before the Valons ever touched them. Admiral Kellen left the chamber that day with a heavy mind. He walked alone, his thoughts echoing. The Valons were dangerous, yes, but humans were something else. He remembered the words spoken when the distress call was first answered. This is Earth Fleet Command. Message received, simple words. Yet filled with weight, it had felt like a promise. But now it felt like a warning. In the dark corners of the galaxy, Rumors spread faster than ships. Merchants spoke of human fleets moving like predators. Miners told tales of humans walking unafraid into storms that would kill others in seconds. Children across alien worlds whispered the new name with both fear and awe, Deathworlders, and far away in the black heart of Valon space. The warlord sat alone. His spies had given him truth, and the truth was a poison. The humans were not prey, they were not rivals. They were a storm that had slept too long and now awoken. They would not stop until the galaxy itself remembered why Earth was called a death world. The shadows of fear stretched wide, and in every corner of the stars, one question grew louder with every whisper. Who was the greater danger? The Valons who conquered worlds, or the humans who conquered death itself? The war was far from over. Yet cracks had already begun to form within the Federation. The aliens had seen the humans fight, had seen their ships charge through fire, and their crews die without hesitation. At first, this gave them hope, but as the battle stretched on, hope began to twist into something darker. Fear. In the council chambers orbiting a neutral star, the voices of alien leaders rose in argument. They bleed as we do, the Lyrian delegate said, her delicate hands trembling. But they do not weep. They do not mourn. Is that the heart of an ally or the mind of a conqueror? The Voth scholar leaned forward, his pale eyes unblinking. You saw what they did to the Valons. They tore them apart without mercy. One day the war will end, and when it does, will these humans not turn their hunger upon us? A Saurian captain slammed his scaled fist against the table. They saved us. Without them, our fleets would be dust. How dare you speak of betrayal? But even Admiral Kellen, who had seen the humans with his own eyes, could not silence the echo of doubt in his heart. He remembered their silence after victory, the way they gathered their dead with no tears, no songs, only duty. To him, it felt as though the humans carried a storm within them, a storm that would never calm. While the council argued, the humans were not blind to their fears on the Iron Resolve. Admiral Hayes listened to reports from his intelligence officers. Some factions speak of binding us with treaties, one said. Others whisper of striking us once the Valons are gone. Hayes gave no sign of surprise. He had expected this. Allies who fear you are still allies, he said coldly. But allies who betray you do not remain allies for long. The humans continued to fight without hesitation, but now their commanders began to move with caution. They spoke little at the councils, offering no reassurances. Instead, they let their actions speak in fire and steel. The Federation fleets depended on them more with every passing battle, and with every victory the fear grew in secret. Small groups of alien leaders met away from the council. The Lyrians argued for preparing defenses against the humans. The Voth suggested building weapons hidden from human sensors. Others debated cutting ties with Earth before it was too late. But all their words shared the same heartbeat of fear. The humans had answered the call. Yes, but who had invited the storm into their homes? Admiral Kellen found himself torn. He had seen the worst of the Valons, their cruelty, their hunger for domination. But the humans were different. They did not conquer for pride nor for expansion. They fought because fighting was what they were. It was not ambition that drove them. But instinct, and instinct Kellen knew could not be reasoned with. The Valons themselves noticed the cracks in the Federation. Spies reported whispers of betrayal, of mistrust between humans and their allies. The Valon warlord smiled for the first time since his defeat. If the prey devours itself, he growled, then the predator need only wait. Back on the Iron Resolve, Hayes stood at the viewport watching the stars drift by. One of his captains approached, her face marked with the calm steel common to all humans. The aliens distrust us, she said. They see the monster in us more than the savior. Hayes nodded once. Then let them, he replied. Fear is stronger than loyalty, and both serve the same end. But among the human crews there was no hatred for their allies. Only a quiet understanding. They knew they were different. They knew the others could never grasp what it meant to be born on Earth. To wake every day in a world that tested you. To know that the ground itself could betray you. So when the aliens looked at them with fear, the humans did not argue. They only sharpened their weapons and prepared for the next battle. Kellen, unable to bury his doubts, sought an audience with Hayes. He stood on the bridge of the human flagship, feeling the weight of its steel and fire around him. Admiral, he said carefully, do you fight for us? Or do you fight only for yourselves? Hayes turned, his eyes hard as stone. There is no difference, he said. If you survive, we survive. If we fall, you fall. That is all that matters. It was the truth, and yet it was not enough. Kellen left the human ship more uneasy than before, for he saw that Hayes truly believed his words. To the humans, allies and enemies both were only part of the same equation. War, survival, victory. The Federation's fractures deepened with every council meeting. Allies who once spoke with trust now hid their intentions behind false smiles. Some even sent secret messages to the Valons, desperate for a way to escape both the enemy and the humans. The seeds of betrayal had been planted, and all it would take was one spark to make them grow. Meanwhile, the humans prepared in silence. Their fleets moved like wolves in the dark, their eyes fixed only on the coming storm. They cared little for the whispers of fear, because they knew the truth the others could not yet see. The Valons were coming with their full strength, and when that day arrived, it would not be trust nor politics, nor fear that decided the fate of the galaxy. It would be war, and in war, there were none better than the Deathworlders. The galaxy seemed to hold its breath. The Valons had gathered their strength, summoning fleets so vast they blotted out the stars. It was not a raid this time, not a test. It was their answer to humanity. A declaration of total war. Every spy, every scout, every whisper carried the same truth. The largest Valon armada in living memory was coming. Tens of thousands of ships, and against such a storm, no fleet had ever survived, but the humans were waiting. On the bridge of the Iron Resolve, Admiral Hayes stood like a shadow carved into steel. Before him stretched a tactical map of the galaxy, every line a snare, every star a hidden blade. The Federation leaders had begged him to retreat, to hide, to scatter, but Hayes had refused. "You do not run from predators," he told them coldly. "You teach them fear." The trap had been prepared in silence. Human fleets moved unseen through backlanes of space, their ships cloaked by clever tactics rather than technology. They hid in asteroid fields inside gas giants. Even in the debris of broken battles, every move had been calculated, every sacrifice chosen long before the first shot was fired. The Federation watched nervously. Some believed the humans mad, others whispered of genius. But all agreed on one truth: this was no ordinary battle. It would be a reckoning. The Valon fleet arrived like a black tide, wave upon wave of cruisers, carriers, and battleships, their hulls glowing red like wounds across the stars. The warlord himself stood aboard his flagship, his voice a roar across the channels. "Crush them, burn them, leave no stone of their world standing." The first clash came sudden and sharp. Valon scouts surged forward, expecting resistance, expecting chaos. Instead, they found silence. Empty systems, lifeless stations, abandoned colonies, but the silence was only bait. When the Valon fleet pushed deeper, the trap closed from behind asteroid belts. Human ships erupted like predators leaping from shadows. Missiles streaked in swarms, railguns tore through shields. Entire squadrons vanished in fire before they could even turn. The warlord snarled but pushed his armada forward. For every loss he had 10 more ships. He believed sheer numbers would smother the humans, but Hayes had studied the Valons. He knew their pride, their hunger to press the attack, and he had shaped the battlefield to feed that pride until it destroyed them. The humans retreated, but not in panic. They gave ground slowly, bleeding the enemy at every step. Each retreat led the Valons deeper into the jaws of the trap. Federation ships followed hesitantly. Some still doubted, others feared being left behind. But when they saw the precision of the humans, their fear turned to awe. In the second phase, the humans struck at the heart. A hidden fleet emerged from a gas giant, their engines igniting the swirling clouds. The Valon supply carriers exploded before the enemy even realized they were under attack. Without fuel, without resupply, the vast armada began to choke on its own size. The warlord roared in fury, "Press forward! Burn them!" But forward was exactly where Hayes wanted him. Every move the Valons made dragged them into narrower space. Every system chosen for the trap was a blade angled at their throat. Admiral Kellen, watching from his ship, felt his scales tighten with dread and wonder. He whispered to his crew, "This is not war as we know it. This is a hunt," and he was right. The humans were hunters, the Valons the prey. Even with all their power, even with their endless ships, they were being driven like animals into a pen of fire. The third phase came like thunder. Hidden mines exploded across hyperspace lanes. Cutting off retreat, human dreadnoughts emerged from hiding. Their cannons blazing, Federation ships, inspired by the fury of their allies, surged forward. Together they struck with a storm that tore through the Veilon lines. The void became chaos, ships colliding, hulls burning, screams echoing across broken channels. But in that chaos the humans thrived. They rammed, they sacrificed. They fought with a fury that no logic could match. Every death was a weapon, every loss another blade in the enemy's heart. On the Iron Resolve, Hayes stood unmoving. Reports of his own destroyed ships came one after another. Still, he gave no sign of weakness. His eyes were fixed on the enemy flagship. "The warlord is there," he said quietly. "Break him, and the beast dies." The battle raged for hours that felt like days. The Veilon armada that had once filled the stars now burned in fragments. Still they fought, still they resisted. But the trap had closed. Their numbers no longer mattered. Their pride had led them to slaughter at last. The enemy flagship reeled under the assault. Federation guns and human cannons tore into its armor. In a final act of defiance, one human cruiser, already aflame, rammed the flagship's hull. The explosion lit the void brighter than a star, and when the light faded, the Veilon warlord was gone. Silence fell across the battlefield. The humans did not cheer. The Federation did not sing, only the wreckage spoke, drifting like the bones of giants in the dark. The trap had worked, the armada was broken, but the cost had been terrible. Half the human fleet gone. Thousands of lives sacrificed. Admiral Hayes turned from the viewport, his voice calm. "Prepare for the next strike," he ordered. "The war is not over, not yet." Admiral Kellen listened. His heart heavy. The trap had been genius, but it revealed something the Council had feared. Humans did not see victory as an end. To them, victory was only another step, and the galaxy began to wonder. If the humans could break the greatest armada the Veilons had ever built, then what, if anything, could ever break the humans? The galaxy had seen battles before, but nothing like this. The Great Trap had shattered the largest Veilon armada in history. Yet the war was not finished. The survivors of that slaughter regrouped, clawing their way back with rage instead of fear. And when they returned, they brought not caution, but desperation. Desperation made them dangerous across the Federation. The story spread faster than light. Whispers in every market, every station, every colony. The humans broke the Veilons. The Deathworlders turned the tide. Children played at being human soldiers. Alien poets wrote songs of steel and fire. But the leaders of those same worlds whispered a darker question. If they could do this to the Veilons, what could they do to us? Admiral Hayes cared nothing for whispers. On the Iron Resolve, he prepared for the next strike. His fleets moved with deadly silence, regrouping at hidden outposts. Every damaged ship repaired, every weapon sharpened. The humans had not come to fight small wars. They had come to end them. The Veilons launched their counterattack, desperate to crush the Deathworlders before fear spread further. They hurled fleets into human-controlled sectors, burning colonies, slaughtering civilians, leaving nothing but smoke. It was a message. They would not bow. But the humans answered not with fear, not with retreat. They answered with fire. Hayes unleashed his fleets with precision. Not scattered, not reckless this time. Now came the true weapons, the strategies hidden until the galaxy was ready to see them. Massive carriers unfolded like steel titans, releasing swarms of drones, each drone armed with railguns and warheads. Moving like a storm of steel insects, Veilon ships found themselves surrounded, ripped apart before they could fire a shot. The Federation fleets followed in awe. They had thought the trap was the limit of human strength, but this was something else entirely. The humans had been holding back and now unchained. They showed the galaxy the face of their true war machine. The battles were no longer contests, they were executions. Human dreadnoughts unleashed kinetic weapons so massive they cracked moons in half. Missile storms blackened the void, blotting out the stars with fire. Even when human ships were destroyed, their reactors were rigged to detonate, taking enemies with them in death. The Veilons screamed their defiance. But defiance could not stop annihilation. On one battlefield, a Veilon commander sent a desperate transmission. "These are not soldiers," he cried, his voice broken. "These are executioners. These are predators in the skins of men." It was his last message before a human salvo reduced his ship to dust. Admiral Kellen, watching from his vessel, felt a chill deeper than fear. He saw the humans move through battle like it was nothing. Every maneuver perfect, every strike merciless. And when the last enemy ship was destroyed, there was no celebration, no relief, only silence. It was as though the humans had done nothing more than finish another task. In the Federation Council chambers, panic spread. Leaders who once prayed for salvation now begged for limits. "They are too strong," one alien delegate cried. "Stronger than even the Valons, stronger than all of us combined. How long before they turn their guns on us?" But no one dared say it to Hayes's face, because every one of them had seen what happened to those who stood against Earth's fleets. The Valons, broken and bleeding, tried one last desperate strategy. They gathered their remnants around fortress worlds, hoping to lure the humans into traps of their own. But the humans did not fight as the Valons expected. They did not charge blindly, they did not take the bait. Instead, they unleashed weapons no one had seen before. Kinetic bombardments from orbit, rods of tungsten dropped at near light speed. Planets cracked, fortresses burned, entire armies erased in a single strike. The Valons screamed across the stars, but their screams carried only one truth: defeat. Admiral Hayes stood at the heart of it all, his face as calm as the day of the first meeting. To him, this was not glory, it was duty, and duty demanded the enemy be ended once and for all. Kellen, standing in the ruins of yet another battlefield, could not stop his thoughts. Were the humans heroes or monsters? They had saved the Federation, yes, but they had done it with a cold fury that seemed less like mercy and more like nature itself. He thought of Earth, of storms and beasts and endless struggle. Perhaps the humans had not brought war to the galaxy at all. Perhaps the galaxy had simply forgotten what war truly was. On the other side of the stars, the Valon warlord, once proud and unshaken, now sat broken, his fleets gone, his empire crumbling. He whispered to his remaining commanders, "We called them prey, but they were hunters, always hunters. The final blow was yet to come." But already the galaxy understood the truth. The Deathworlders were not allies, not enemies, not even conquerors. They were a force, a storm given shape, and wherever they moved, nothing would remain the same. In the silence after the battles, alien children asked their parents the same question. If the Deathworlders can destroy the Valons, who can destroy the Deathworlders? No parent had an answer, and in the dark of space, Admiral Hayes gave none either. His fleets prepared for the last strike, the strike that would decide not only the war but the future of the galaxy. And though he never said it aloud, his eyes carried the truth. The humans would end the war. But what they would do after, the galaxy could only wait to learn. The war was ending, though the stars themselves seemed scarred by fire. The Valons had bled for every system, every world, every inch of space, but in the end, even their pride could not save them. Their fleets lay shattered, their fortresses burned, their warlord dead among the wreckage of his flagship. The predators who once ruled the galaxy were now prey to memory and dust. For the first time in living history, the Federation worlds were silent. No alarms, no desperate cries for help, no reports of colonies burning, only the drifting wreckage of the greatest war ever fought. And at the heart of that silence stood the humans, their fleets bruised but unbroken, their faces calm as stone, the Deathworlders, the saviors, the monsters, the storm that had answered the call in the council chambers. Leaders from every species gathered. They looked at one another with weary eyes, their voices low with doubt. The Lyrian delegate whispered, "It is finished. The Valons are no more." The Voth scholar shook his pale head, his voice soft but sharp. "No, the Valons are finished, but what of the humans?" That question hung heavy in the air. Every delegate knew its weight. They had begged for salvation, and it had come. But now that salvation stood before them, silent and unblinking, and no one knew what price would follow. Admiral Hayes stood before them, his uniform marked with the ashes of war. He did not bow, he did not smile. He spoke in the same cold voice that had carried through every battle. "The war is done," he said. "The Valons are broken. Their empire will not rise again." For a moment, relief flickered through the council. But Hayes continued, "When the galaxy calls again, we will answer." The words struck like iron. Not a promise, not a threat, but something heavier. The Federation leaders shifted nervously. They had hoped for celebration, for closure, but the humans offered only duty, only the certainty of war's return, because to them, war was not an ending. It was a cycle, and cycles never truly stop. On the worlds freed from Valon chains, statues of humans were carved, children dressed as Deathworlders in their games. Songs of Earth's fleet spread across the stars. But beneath the celebration, whispers grew. Some called them heroes. Others called them executioners, everywhere. The question lingered. What happens when the Deathworlders no longer wait for a call? Admiral Kellen, weary but alive, traveled to Earth to see the truth for himself. What he found chilled him more than battle. He saw storms tear across continents, seas that raged like living beasts, mountains that belched fire into the sky, and within it all, humans walking as if the world itself was not their enemy. Children running through snowstorms, families laughing under skies heavy with lightning. Everywhere he looked, he saw life in defiance of death, and he understood. The humans did not fight because they wished to. They fought because their very world had trained them to. War was not a choice for Earth, it was existence. When Kellen returned to the council, his words carried a new weight. They will not conquer us, he said. They do not hunger for empires or thrones. But neither will they ever stop. If war comes again, they will rise again, and if peace lasts 1,000 years, they will still be ready. The chamber fell into silence. No one could argue, no one could deny. The Voth scholar finally whispered the truth aloud. Perhaps the galaxy has not been saved, he said. Perhaps it has only been reminded of what? The Lyrian delegate asked with trembling hands. The scholar looked toward the stars, reminded of why Earth is called a death world. Meanwhile, on the Iron Resolve, Hayes stood at his command post. His officers worked quietly, repairing ships, tending to the wounded. Preparing for what might come next, one of them approached. Hesitation in her voice. "Admiral, the Council fears us," she said. "They fear what we may become." Hayes gave a thin, tired smile. "Let them fear," he said. "Fear will keep them sharp, fear will keep them ready. One day they will understand that the storm is not their enemy, but their shield." But even Hayes, in his iron calm, could not silence a thought that stirred in his mind. For all his certainty, he knew what fear could do. He knew that whispers could grow into knives, and knives into wars, and perhaps one day, the Deathworlders would be called not to save but to defend themselves, against the very ones they had bled to protect. The stars burned quietly, watching as empires rebuilt and fleets limped home. The Vaylons were finished, but the galaxy was changed forever. No one could forget the storm that had come. No one could forget the humans, the Deathworlders who had answered the call. And though peace returned, it was a fragile peace, one built not on trust, but on fear. And in that fear, a new story began to take shape. Because when the galaxy looked at Earth, they no longer saw an ally or a savior. They saw a question written in blood and fire. If the Deathworlders can end wars, what will happen when the war they choose to fight is their own?